Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
So what is the number one activity that you should be focused on during the slower season? In this episode of the Childcare Bridge, I want to talk through the art of preparation for your upcoming busy season. So while a lot of centers take the next 30 days, 45 days or so to slow down right before the calm, before that big storm hits, I actually want you to do the opposite. Now, one of the things, if you are new here, you're going to very quickly realize that we like to do the opposite of the herd. Why would we like to do the opposite? Why should we do the opposite? If everyone is veering right, we want to go left. If everyone is pulling back, we're going to scale up. The reason that we want to do the opposite is that we need to build this center, this business, this childcare empire so that you can stand the test of time. And for you to stand the test of time, you've got to build that moat. Marketing, operations, accounting, and finance, team/talent. You have to have those four core areas tied up in a bow at all times and constantly getting better. So when I look at those four core areas and I try and boil it down to, okay, great. I know that I can focus on hiring different people or getting ready for the upcoming season, doing some of the paperwork stuff. I can get my financials in check. I can start looking for grants and tax deductions. There's always going to be a million things that you can do. The question remains, should you go and seek out some of these grants? Should you go down the path and look at upsizing your director to a better director that you just feel is a better culture fit and someone that is just going to help kind of change that particular location? Should you go down that path? Should you redo your standard operating procedures? There's all of these potential tactics. There's always going to be lots of shoulds. As the leader of the organization, you need to be able to constantly prioritize and reprioritize in real time based on one thing. That one thing is data. So you might have thought that I was going to say you should spend the next 30 days getting all of your marketing ready to go. Candidly, that should already be happening. For all of the centers that we're running the marketing for, and if we're not running your marketing, comment on this episode, reach out to us. We're always happy to jump in and help. It's not marketing. It's not finding a better director. It's not getting staffed up. It's actually honing in on your data. That doesn't sound like a very sexy topic. I love to talk marketing and strategy and culture, hiring. I love to talk about all that. I love to give you content around that. But what I continue to see day after day, including the hundreds of centers that we're working for and working with, that when I start to ask them about other data points so that we can start to make critical decisions, they have no clue how to find the numbers, where the numbers are, or what the numbers are. How can you expect to make any changes? How can you expect to see things improve if you don't have baselines and if you don't understand what the data is telling you? Why would it make sense for you to go down the rabbit hole of finding all of these grants outside of maybe you're going to win some free money or some grant money or some low-cost loans? So yeah, that's a nice upside. But what if the data is telling you that you don't need that right now? You're flush with cash, your profit margins are strong, your tuition dollar in terms of what you're charging, it's at a great number. However, you could add another $300,000 a year at this particular location just by adding some enrollments. So maybe your capacity is 150 and you're at 100 or 110. If you're not constantly looking at the data, and I'm going to circle back to this capacity versus what are your current enrollments, because obviously you have to have these numbers legally every single day. How many kids are in your center, and you know what you're licensed for. And it's not even that number that I'm most concerned with. It's all of the metrics. It's you being able to have your marketing gauges, your business gauges, your dashboard that you can spend 5 to 10 minutes a day looking at. I just got off the phone with one of our most successful centers. I absolutely love working with them. They're one of the only centers that I personally take most of their calls. And we started looking at, okay, great, where do we need to put resources? Where do we want to continue to scale up? How is this looking? Are we ready for another acquisition, another location? So we started looking and talking about all these things. And I said, great, show me some of the updated dashboards. Let's look at how the margins are looking. Let's start to dig in. Let's dig in further into the number of tours that happened in the last 30 days to kind of gauge year over year, month over month, week over week, how the tours that are walking in the door are starting to trend. Let's look at the withdrawals and the reasons for those outside of summer, for example. Let's dig in there. What ended up happening very quickly was they couldn't produce the data. And there was every excuse as to why it couldn't be done. And unfortunately, for this particular instance, it came down to accountability and just extreme ownership of the different directors having to submit things on certain days. And for this particular basket of centers, the directors never seem to do it on time. To me, that seems like an easy fix, but we'll save that conversation for a different day. But I paused the meeting and I said, how can we effectively make decisions for the busiest of months, which is right around the corner, when you can't tell me this data point, this data point, this data point with close to 100% accuracy? What if all of a sudden your accounts receivable skyrocketed because some of the new enrollments that came in, maybe the lead quality wasn't as great as it should be, and they ended up signing a bunch of enrollments that didn't have any money, and if we're not looking at that data, again, how can we be prepared for the busy season? So what I'm looking for you to do is to put together a simple dashboard. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. I don't want you going and buying expensive software tools. The two tools that I use every single day, I use the Google Suite because we're back onto Gmail and the Google Suite. So Google Sheets can do everything you could ever need. There are $100 million companies. They literally run every one of their metrics dashboards on Google Sheets. You can build beautiful dashboards. You can build gauges. It's insane what you can do. The second tool is Notion, and you can do the exact same there. I have seen $50 million, $100 million businesses being run from Notion. But if you don't have the data, if you don't have the systems and processes set up for whomever on your team is getting this data for you, when do they put it in? How do they put it in so that you can look at it? So if I pause for a second and say, okay, great. So Michael, you're telling me that I shouldn't be focused on marketing. I shouldn't be focused on staff training and improving the playground and buying security cameras and fixing the curriculum. That's all great stuff. You as the leader need to prioritize where things rank. Is your time best spent solving this challenge, that challenge? But the way that I know how to solve problems is by data, plain and simple. If I don't have data, I cannot make an effective decision. And then for me personally, I get into analysis paralysis. I get into the spot and I just had this happen after my call with the center, where now I'm into analysis paralysis with them of some of the next couple of moves. And then I jumped on with my team. And it's only a couple of days. However, they have an expectation that every single day they update all of our marketing metrics. How many leads came in? What was the cost per lead? How many strategy calls are we doing? Emails sent, every metric. Once a day. It takes 5 minutes. We do it manually because I want them to manually pull it. While I love automation and AI, I want people to manually go and get the data so they're actually having to then look at it. And I went into the dashboard like I do every day, and it's 2 days out of date. It's not acceptable. So I was on a meeting with the team and I said, I'm going to hop off this meeting. I'm not having another meeting with any of you on this particular team until this dashboard is 100% up to date. Plain and simple. You get what you are inspecting. Inspect what you expect. If you expect data every Wednesday, 5 o'clock, but you don't look at it until a week later, you don't know if the data came in. I need you to pause every single day and look at the data. So let's look at a couple of the core simple metrics that you can and should be looking at. From a marketing standpoint, how many leads came in? So every day, every week, every month. How many tours were booked? How many tours showed up? I always want to know the show percentage. Might book 100 tours and have 70 that show. Of those tours, what is, was, and will be the result? So how many enrolled? How many do we think are going to enroll based on the feedback? Then what is, and this is my favorite metric from a marketing standpoint, cost per enrollment, CPE. When you have that single number and you manage your centers off of that one number, assuming that it's a profitable number, it is game over. Why is it game over? Because if you know what you can acquire an enrollment for that is profitable for your business within X amount of time, you literally, to grow, just have to add more money into the engine. That's it. It is literally that simple. Literally that simple. Michael, you're oversimplifying this. I'm not. If you know what it costs for you to acquire an enrollment, so out of how many leads, how many tours, let's say it cost $1,000 to get that one enrollment, and your tuition, let's say, is $2,000, and of that $2,000, let's say you profit $500. So within 2 months of that enrollment being there, that $1,000 that you invested to get them is now paid for. So everything from month 3 and on is now profit. That to me is a pretty sustainable model. So if I wanted another 10 enrollments, based on the data, I should be able to go and buy 10 enrollments for $10,000. And I know then within 2 months, I'll be in the green. As simple as that. So that's the first data set from a marketing standpoint. From an accounting standpoint, for me, I laser focus. You can look at all the metrics. I laser into my P&L and I want to know what my profit is at the end of the day. That's the number that I am most interested in. Now, there are a lot of ways to skin that particular cat. There's owner add backs, and I don't want to overcomplicate this. I want simple dashboards. So if I'm having my bookkeeper, my accountant, someone on my team, I want to know the most important number from the accounting side. What are my margins this month, year to date, period? I want to know what we have in terms of accounts payable, what we have by way of accounts receivable. For me, those are the 3 main accounting numbers. From a staffing standpoint, I want to know team member happiness to see, is my team actually happy? Like, do they like being here? Every month, survey goes out, we gauge team member happiness. I want to know their average wages as they relate to either minimum wage and or the average wages in the area. And I want to make sure that I'm at least 10% above everyone else. If you know that right now people are leaving due to wages, you have to track and look at that number. From a hiring standpoint, how many resumes are we getting? How many interviews are we doing? And then how many hires? I also love to track the time to hire. How long? So if we open a new location, if we want to add another classroom and we need 3 teachers, and we say, well, geez, the data is saying that on average it's taking us 4.5 months to find 1 new teacher, how could you effectively make any decisions the next 45 days on hiring or adding another classroom or scaling your marketing if you're not looking at the data regarding hiring? You can't just magically fill these spots. All comes back to the data. From an operational standpoint, I'm going to look at my capacity to my current numbers of enrollments. I'm going to look at how many processes we have documented. I might track my number of reviews that we're getting. I might track my referrals. I might track personal and professional development. I love to see my staff bettering themselves. And when I have all these on a dashboard, so I can go and see the accounting numbers, the metric numbers, the hiring numbers, the operational numbers, all in one place every week, and ideally every day, now you're in a spot where you can make some decisions. Now you can get yourself ready to potentially pivot. Now you can see the light. You can see the other side because you're being guided by data. If the data says your margins are terrible, why would you be spending any time on camera equipment, playground equipment, etc.? The data is going to guide you where you need to focus before everything gets crazy. Step 1, get the data sets across the 4 areas. Step 2, leverage the data to drive your next 1 project, your second, your third. Knock out those priority projects before the busy season so you can continue to have an amazing year, make the second half of 2025 the best year that you've ever had, rather than constantly being behind the 8 ball. Data, while I know is not a sexy topic, is the most important aspect to you making the right or the wrong decision. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week for some more